Okay, so today's video is about PowerPoint presentations, how you can do your PowerPoint presentations better. So I'll be giving you more on things not to do in your presentation and telling you why they don't work. So before I get into these 3 tips on how to make your presentations really good and work for you, I want to get into a thought. I just want you to consider this thought. We really don't like to consume information with numbers, data and text, right? And think about this. When did storytelling start? When did people start telling stories? 30,000 years ago. That's when cave paintings were there. And remember, you don't have to sit in a cave to tell a story and connect with people around the fireplace and other ridiculous things that people do on company offsites. I've heard of people wolves licking their faces and CEOs flirting with wolves, which I find ridiculous. I don't know where this thing is going. Okay, back to topic. 30,000 years we've been telling stories, right? Around 3,000 years, 4,000 years, we've had text. So people have been writing down stories and sharing information. And maybe about 25 years, PowerPoint presentation, right? So what do you think, how do you think our minds are going to react to stories, and how well do you think they're going to react to PPTs? So PPTs were always aimed to be in the background. The real storyteller is the person presenting it. He's the one who's going to, transfer that information down to generations or down the hierarchy. Meanwhile, the presentation behind is a visual aid. It's just to help them go through that journey and experience his story. It's not there to make notes. It's not there to put in all the data and the statistics, because that's just going to shut people down. I mean, people are just going to turn off. They're going to shut down. Okay, so without any further ado, let me get into my 6 points on how to make better presentations. And point number 1 is sentences. Don't use sentences in your presentation. What you want to do is find keywords, phrases, headings, subheadings, and just keywords. And these keywords are kind of ready reckoners or reminders for you to speak about when you're making that presentation. So this is what happens, right? It's very awkward if you're presenting something and people are looking at your slide and they're able to see the whole sentence or what you're talking about, and then you just repeat the same thing. Then what's the point of you being there, right? But meanwhile, if you have just a keyword phrase, then you look at that keyword, it reminds you, it makes no sense to the audience because they don't know what you're talking about, and then you introduce that subject to them, and then you talk to them and you tell them a story, so they consume it in a much better way. It's a better experience for them and they will remember it better. Coming to point number 2, have just one thought per slide. Now what happens is, a lot of people say, hey, you've designed 60 slides, and then the company says, hey, no, listen, 60 slides is too long, you need to cut it down to 15. So these very smart people, what they really do is take 60 slides, reduce the size, and then start bunging the whole thing in there, right? And what happens is just a mess. The mess of numbers, there are graphs, there are small little points, there are arrow marks here. It takes them through this whole thing and it confuses the hell out of people. And what happens when your mind gets confused? It's going to shut down. It's going to say, hey, I'm not going to waste energy on all that stuff. It's not important to me. It's a huge mess. Nothing good's going to come out of it. I won't be able to follow it. Let's just shut down. It's demotivating for both the presenter and people sitting around when people are slowly going to start rolling their eyes and say, yeah, let's go to the next slide. And that's what you don't want to do. So have one thought, and people can't consume more than 2 or 3 things per slide. So limit your thoughts to about 2 or 3 to the maximum. Point number 3 is about text size or font size. And if you've seen a newspaper, you'd always see the heading is on the largest size, and then you'd get the stories in a size slightly smaller, and the story itself will be in a small font size. So what's important has the largest size, and following this structure helps people to visualize or understand what's important or what's below each other. They understand the hierarchy of information and importance of that information. Using these templates that PowerPoint or Keynote already gives you makes excellent sense instead of trying to make custom changes. This also helps you in a sort of uniform branding. And coming to point number 4, So if you've got inconsistent stuff, not aligned properly, things all over the place, I mean text from different font families, images from all over the place, people start to find, or our eyes are tuned to find mistakes or find faults or find something out of the ordinary, right? So instead of focusing on what you want to communicate to them, people are going to start focusing on all these random thoughts, and different people's minds connect with different things randomly. So having this whole thing in a huge mess is not really good for you. It's going to have different people consuming different information in different ways, and it's going to be difficult to bring them back to your presentation and your flow and take them through your story. So using a template, keeping things minimal, having a proper font size, a hierarchy, having these things consistent throughout all slides are going to help you make a much better presentation. So an extension about the size thing is also keywords, right? So you've got your heading, you've got your subheading, and then you've got the content, and then here you don't use sentences, you're going to use keywords. And so how many keywords do you use? Now don't put all 200 of your features. More than 6 keywords is already too much on each slide. And just imagine this. So if I show you something like this, you're going to have to start counting. If I show you something like this, it's 4. So it's much easier or faster for you to just visually consume things that are 5 or 6. More than 6 is the upper limit. Then your brain is going to have to use, kind of pull out a program to say, okay, let's start counting. That becomes a little difficult for the brain. It starts to use more energy. It can't consume things just visually. It's going to need to pull in more resources, and that increases the kind of stress or the effort to consume your content. It's not going to flow down as smoothly as possible. Have good contrast between your text or where you need focus on. So this can be with larger size, or higher contrast. So white on black is going to be better contrasting. Red on blue is not going to be so contrasty, right? So you want to choose colors with higher contrast for your text and your background. That goes with the images also, right? So you have images that are colorful, and then you want to have a contrasting text so that you can read it properly, so that's more visually appealing and it's not confusing. People won't miss out your text on your image. Go for dull or darker color presentations, darker color images, because the way presentations are supposed to be set up are that the presentation shouldn't be screaming for more attention than the presenter, right? So I've heard this on one of the TED Talks. He's saying the only way, if you use a white presentation, it's so bright, the only way that you can get attention from your audience is if you dress like a clown and with all those very attractive colors, but it might not be the best thing for your corporate setting. So hey, here are my tips for creating better presentations. Have a lot of images, minimal text. Don't be afraid to use many slides. You could go to 100 and 150 slides, no problem. But try and establish few thoughts per slide, and you'll have a more effective presentation, and it'll go through much faster, and it'll give you more flexibility as a presenter to talk about each slide and present that kind of information in a fun, interesting way, and it'll be more memorable. So if you've got any other points about how to make better presentations, please leave them in the comments below, or you could write to me.